Okay, so now we're going to use these ideas for two types of intervention. One is price intervention. We're going to use rent control as the example. What I want to show here, kind of as an overview, is the reasons that economists are generally against any form of price control. This is one thing that economists are pretty clear about, that price control actually hurts markets and hurts consumers and producers. It's not a good idea. However, I also want you to realize that there are no absolutes in this field. There's just better understanding, and there can be conditions under which you might think legitimately, knowing everything that could be wrong with price controls, that you still think in certain circumstances they should be there. I'm going to go through the arguments where those might be the case. Okay? So I'm going to start with the standard argument against price control. Okay, so if we have rent control, a market that is a freely operating market, no intervention to prevent price from moving whatever it would do, we would have a demand for housing and a supply for housing. Say this is housing in Berkeley, rental units in Berkeley, and there would be some price that's established within that market. Okay? The problem that many people would see in this situation that would give rise to rent control is that we think that the price is too high, that it's unfairly too high, or it's bad because it hurts low-income people or whatever. For some reason, we feel that we don't think the price is right. The price is good. However, what I want to show you is that actually the problems that give rise to this high price are exacerbated as soon as you try to place a price control to prevent the price from being that high. Okay, suppose we now instead passed a law that said you can't charge more than a certain amount for rental units, okay? So this is a very stylized form of rent control. Obviously, different cities have different kinds of rent control. In San Francisco, you can't raise the rent after people moved in, but you can raise it after, when a new tenant comes in. In Berkeley, you can't raise it except under circumstances at all, okay? So it's different things. But stylized, you could think of it, we're setting a price that's below what the equilibrium was. What is going to be the impact of this on the quantity transacted? Recall that you always have to have two parties to make a transaction, and so the quantity transacted is actually going to go down. This is the main reason to feel that rent control is actually not a good idea. The problem that generally gives rise to rent control is there's not enough units available for the number of people who want to buy them, and so the price gets astronomical. But what happens as soon as you apply rent control is you make that problem even worse. You reduce the number of units that are available on the market. What happens here is some people who are willing to supply rental units as grandmother units or whatever in their apartments or whatever, at a lower rent, they're just not willing to. It's not profitable, it's not worth the hassle, and they take their units off the market. And so you have actually fewer markets, fewer units available to this mass of people that want to have them. So the basic problem is not enough units, and by putting on this rent control, you make that problem even worse by having fewer units available.